I think it is essentially going to be between that and globalism, because you've got people that don't want the borders, you've got the people that want to protect their borders. We've had too many laws that have come in from foreign bodies, the United Nations, the European Union, stuff like that, the ECHR. So we've had so many of these laws that have actually been implemented within our law that we've got so much to actually undo, and they've betrayed that trust. But I think young people are starting to realise that there is a link between the immigration crisis and the housing crisis.
If you really wanted to be a democracy, you would just do what your current voters want instead of just getting new voters.
The government are essentially tying their hands behind their back and taking their land off of them. What obviously the government are looking to do is to expand obviously on these solar fields. They want to build pylons going across all of the essentially all of the green land, which is where obviously you have your crops grown. They're just looking at it. Once they do that, they destroy the farmland. You won't be able to grow on it again.
Before we start the conversation, may I ask, if you want to support the show, all you have to do is press subscribe. It massively helps me with continuing to talk to fascinating people you want to hear from. And let's be honest, it also helps me turn this from an expensive hobby to, well, a less expensive one. Your support means the world to me, so thank you, and let's jump straight in. The right in the UK is increasingly fracturing. Even though Reform is leading in the polls, there are some fallouts within the party that we are watching on our screens day in, day out. Just in the last few weeks, we had two new movements on the right that have been created. Advance UK Party by Ben Habib and Restore Britain Movement by Rupert Lowe. What do you think is happening on the centre-right and the right side of the political spectrum right now?
In all fairness, I don't actually know. I'm hoping that Ben and Rupert have got kind of like something in place with what they're doing by bringing their sides together. I think obviously where you've got Reform as well, they've kind of like got their own little. They've created like their own little group kind of thing. Same with what Labour have done. They don't want any interruption or anything like that. They don't want anyone else to get involved, and they almost don't want to share it. I feel like there's big egos on every side. I feel like there's big egos, and I think everyone wants to do something, if that makes sense, but they don't want to do it underneath anybody else, if that makes sense. I think that's where we're kind of like heading down towards. I do hope the two of them can bring their ideas together, if I'm going to be honest with you. Because at the end of the day, we're all kind of like, we all want the same thing. We all want to have our country back how it once was. We want it to be run like a country. We don't want it to be run for the world. We want it for us at the end of the day. And that's just how it needs. That's how it needs to be. Otherwise, you're going to see more issues arise.
For people that are not in the UK, there is a reason why I didn't include Conservatives when I was listing the people on the right-hand side of the spectrum, and because most people in the UK know that they are not actually a right side party at all. They might have some policies within the economics maybe that are a little bit more conservative, but they are very much center left, I would say, if you just look at them in the aggregate. Hence, I didn't really mention them. I think the critics of the right as a movement is pointing out at the fact that they can't seem to unite. They can't really get on board with an idea. Now, I'm trying to think it through in my own head whether a context of ideas is better than just having one party that might be fracturing, because think especially with Reform, when they first started getting the momentum within the polls, they did do some quite controversial interviews when they seemingly were going very, very soft on, the big button conversations in the UK, such as immigration. And I then thought that the creation of movements more to the right is going to basically create an environment when the best one can win, right? And when they each other can sort of tilt their own ideas to see where the public really wants them to be. And I think because realistically speaking, the next general election, we're probably like still 4 years away from that. So in those 4 years, I think that there might be enough time for all of these parties to find the happy medium, to figure out where they actually want to be. But on the other hand, I am a little bit concerned as well about the fact that they might be just splitting the votes. I just can't imagine having another 4 or 5 years of Labour Party in power right now, because they are just, I mean, it's bonkers what they are doing.
I agree.
Which one do you think is more likely? Do you think that it will work itself out, that all of these movements are just going to be the contents of the best one to win, or is it just going to split the votes?
I think it's quite difficult, to be fair, because in my point of view, I've seen it that Reform have got the ball rolling for more people to essentially become right. I wouldn't really say right or left. In all fairness, I feel like it's going to be going down to I think kind of like, I wouldn't say nationalist, because I feel like nationalist has got quite a negative kind of like label to it now.
Connotation, yeah.
Yeah, it has. I think it is essentially going to be between that and globalism, because you've got people that don't want the borders, you've got the people that want to protect their borders. I think it's going to be the case of who can actually do what they say they're going to do, and Reform are being smart and clever about it. Maybe they've kind of like put a hard break on the things that they were saying to get them into power so they can implement stuff. I don't know. I really, really don't know. I think we've just got. I think obviously we have to go with what suits us best, but we can't follow a trend as well at the same time. I think that's where it gets dangerous, because I feel like that's the thing that's happened over in America with American politics. People kind of like follow trends because there are only two parties over there, essentially. You've got the Republicans and the Democrats. Over here, you've actually got quite a wide range. And I feel like it's now becoming a trend to go for certain parties. It never used to be like that. It used to be vote for the people and the party that stands most likely by you. That's how it always was, and it's not so much the case anymore, I don't think, especially if that's the case on the left side, especially. Do we have to do that on the right? Maybe, to be smart about it, quite possibly. But I also feel like we need to stick to our guns and stick to what we actually are.
Yeah. The one good point that you've made earlier on, which probably just needs exploring a little bit, or maybe just labeling what it is that we are talking about. I think we still use the labels left and right because for such a long time it was how we used to talk about the politics. But right now it does seem to be establishment that stands for radical globalism, and anti-establishment, which really favors the nation over international interests and essentially the interests of other nations. Is just initially, I think they used to map, so the left used to, at least a couple of years ago, the left broadly was standing for a bit more globalist ideas, and the new right started moving towards more sort of national priority side. So maybe talking about establishment and anti-establishment, or, radical globalism and anti-radical globalism is going to be better. It's probably more accurate about what it is that we're talking about. It's just it's a bigger mouthful to kind of get out.
No, of course, yeah.
So as we are talking about establishment and the government overreach, you have been quite vocal about criticizing the government, the overreach of the establishment, and essentially ignoring ordinary people. What I'm trying to figure out is, where do you think should be the line between the necessary function of the state and creep of the authoritarian tendencies.
What's my view on that? Sorry.
Yeah.
See, I'm more obviously for me personally. I think it's really difficult. It is really difficult because there are obviously things that aren't like we do need to have sorted, but there's also things that you need to let people figure out and deal with themselves as well. So you can't. The government shouldn't get too heavily involved in what the people do and what the people say. I don't think. I think they should have the base laws and stuff like that. The issue that we've got is that we've had too many laws that have come in from foreign bodies, the United Nations, the European Union, stuff like that, the ECHR. So we've had so many of these laws that have actually been implemented within our law that we've got so much to actually undo. And it's obviously going to take a lot of work, and I think that's where they've overstepped massively by allowing these bodies to influence our law, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it gives them more power, it gives them more money as well, doesn't it? So they get what they want, and we lose out massively.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it is so... Just, I can't believe what I'm witnessing in the UK. I am very familiar with what the life in the Soviet Union used to look like, and it is unbelievable. I don't think people quite realize just how many tricks from the Soviet books is our government borrowing. This whole thing of non-crime hate incidents, and obviously the latest one, which we are recording at the end of July. Yesterday, the new online safety bill has come in force, and suddenly many accounts on X can't see certain stories. And it just says that you just get this message to say that this post is temporarily not banned, but it's temporarily not available in your location. So, and that is obvious. I think the initial reports was that these type of stories are about the anti-immigration protests that are apparently now spreading through the UK, but the government and the establishment doesn't want people to know, so they block these news. Now, this is I think what people are sort of thinking. I'm not sure whether it was confirmed just yet. Do you know whether that's sort of definitely what's happening, or is it just what seems to be happening right now?
So I will answer that just really quickly. It's funny you said about the Soviet side of things, because I've recently been referring to the British establishment as the British Soviet kind of thing. That's kind of like how they're going with what they're implementing. From this Online Safety Act bill, did you mean as well?
Yeah, I mean that was just yesterday that it came in.
I mean,
if they are trying to stop the spread of information about just how annoyed people are and about the protests that are happening across the country, that's it really is not good. That's not how a that's not how democracies run.
No.
These type of things don't happen in democracies. But yeah, I mean, I've got this saying that I don't think that we are living in democracy anymore. I think we are living in some sort of weird trans democracy, which is trying to pass as a democracy, but it doesn't function like one.
The dystopian reality, isn't it? That's what it comes down to. That's exactly what we're heading for. And never in my lifetime growing up, I always thought that I'd grow up, go out to work, go home, and that's it. I don't have to worry about anything else. But no, I originally grew up in Berkshire. I've seen my hometown totally change. It's a complete shadow of what it used to be. I've moved up to Lincolnshire, and within 18 months, 2 years, I've noticed a massive change here as well, and it shows that it's spreading like wildfire. There's little towns in the in Lincolnshire that are suffering heavily for it, and it's really horrible. It's quite scary, if I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, as a white man, we are probably right now. It probably sounds crazy to say, but we are probably the most kind of like underrepresented in every way. We are just completely brushed aside when it comes to jobs. We're overseen, we're overlooked. Just with everything. Jobs is the main thing. There's a reason why so many men are struggling in jobs. That's why mental health within men is skyrocketing right now. It all has a knock-on effect, and I think people really need to wake up and realise it. Because we are getting to the point where, at what point is it too late?
Yeah, and I think with the men, I mean, initially it started with deindustrialization, where a lot of the jobs, the manual hard jobs that men used to take, that were actually very well paid. They maybe weren't the most, the intellectually stimulating jobs, but they were difficult jobs that women either wouldn't or couldn't do, most of them anyway. And a lot of men were taking these jobs, but they had set like a purpose in their lives. Now that all of these jobs have disappeared, there is this massive gap for the working class men, where they probably don't have as many opportunities as they had, let's say, 40-50 years ago. And this is even before we start talking about the DEI quotas and things like that, where in quite a few jobs, whether it was within the public sector, there is an open racism of, the white men need not apply, which is just insane in a country which is white minority. It's insane in any context, but especially in the country where white population is still a majority. That's just insanity. So if we still believed that we didn't hollow out the jobs enough, then they sort of layer that on top. And I mean, we can see that in the northern towns. I've been living in the northwest of the UK for many years now. All of the towns over here, the and industrial towns, you can see it on the streets. You really can. So
I was just about to say, it is crazy when you think about it. It's almost like, when did this actually kind of like all start? Because I remember growing up, you want a good job, you want to do this, you want to do that, or you don't want to be doing this, or you don't want to be doing that. You're almost like kind of like told through that throughout school. Oh no, you wouldn't want to do something like that. Oh no, you want to do something like that. And it's just kind of like trying to guide you when you should really be able to try and find what you want to do. Like, when I was growing up, I always wanted to be an electrician. I gave it a go, all right. It didn't work out. It didn't work out for me. My boss wasn't the best of people. I tried to get back into it, and then after that, I just fell out of love with it. Which obviously one bad kind of like attempt did kind of like taint my overall view on what I wanted to do, which is a shame. But I'm obviously grateful for where I've ended up now. But it was almost like when I was growing up in school, no one else wanted to kind of like do that role. It was just, it wasn't anything like that. It was like one or two people that actually wanted to. Apart from that, there was nothing.
When you were going through your education, would you say that, what was the sort of underlying narrative in terms of what you should be doing once you sort of grow up? Did you feel like there was a push to sort of go to the university and take up these intellectual roles, or was there still an appreciation of all the jobs that still need doing, like plumbing and electricians and construction and things like that?
No, it was always to go to university. You either wanted to go to college, then university, sixth form, then university. That's how it always was always kind of like laid out. It was never, oh, you want to go into like a hands-on job role. It was almost like they weren't pushing people to go for a hands-on job role. And if it was hands-on, it was mainly art that they were pushing people to go for.
Okay. Interesting. I've been reading a lot about the overproduction of the elites, and how that leads to like just wide swaths of people that have got a huge gap between what is available and just how many of these sort of high status jobs are available within any society, against just how many people we are producing that technically on the education front anyway should fill that role, and that actually leads to social unrest. Just feels like many people haven't really thought through what we're doing. It seemed to me like there's been that progress for the sake of progress, whilst no one was actually thinking through what we were doing, and we are now arriving at the reality of decisions that have been made 20, 30 years ago, and it's like, oops, we really didn't think this through, did we? Okay, so
we really paid attention to it, did we? Really? No one ever thought it would come to this. I mean, there was a few people that tried to kind of like stress this, but it was almost laughed off. It was laughed off. I've got to admit, it was always, oh, that will never happen. And then it'll be, now look at us.
It is really strange because, you see, when I was growing up in post-communist Poland, essentially, and I came to the UK when I was 19, and when I was growing up, there was a push to go to university, but because Poland is structured differently, in Poland, higher education is free. So I'm talking about what it used to look like 20 years ago. And back then, everyone had to had higher degree, essentially. Unless you were going to go into plumbing, electrician, and all that, there were technical schools that used to just, used to leave with a profession of some sort, whether it was hairdressing, construction. But if you wanted to be a cleaner in the supermarket, you still need to have a degree, because everyone was either going straight into jobs or into universities. And it created a culture where everyone knew that no matter what job you needed to do, no matter how menial that job had to be, you still had to had degree, because everyone else had to have a degree. So I think the only difference over there is there was an expectation that no matter what job you wanted to do in the future, you still needed to have that degree behind you. And what it started coming down to was the university that you would get into. But the better universities you would only get to if you had the grades that would allow you to get in there. There was no quotas for for people that learn differently or something like that. It was purely on merit. So you essentially had like a university class system, where the really good jobs were taken by the graduates from top universities, and then everything else was the rest of universities. But I think the one thing that was missing there was no expectation of having a top job if you just graduated from some random university that like ranks as second from the bottom.
Yeah.
So
I think it should be down on merit, though, shouldn't it? Everything should always be down to merit.
Yeah. And look, I absolutely get the perceived unfairness of it. But like, life is unfair. There is no going around it. And instead of, I think, telling people to focus on just how unfair life is, we really should be highlighting to people that no matter your circumstances, there are strengths that you can find within it, and that you shouldn't really focus too much over things that you can't change. Like we know that, you know, the really good looking people have got better opportunities in life. It's like, well, if you're ugly duckling, what are you going to do about it? Try and change everyone's perception around you? Or are you just going to try and like carve a niche for yourself where the looks don't matter that much?
Absolutely, yeah. I agree.
Anyway, let's move on to another criticism that the anti-establishment crowd gets, and it's quite often revolves around the fact that the critics of this movement can say that, you know, it's easy to point at the issues within the society. It's much more difficult to actually try and affect some change. So how do you see that? And in what way can people even make a start with trying to affect the change if they are not in, you know, the politics or not in charge of some big Quangos?
I think, do you mean within like communities and stuff like that for people to make a difference?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it all starts by, it does start by essentially kind of like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it really. It always starts at home. It's about having stability at home, which I feel like has been massively destroyed, for one. And then communities have been destroyed because communities are so there's so much division now within society, and it does start within smaller communities. When I was growing up, it was always everyone was so tight knit, everyone helps one another out. Now there isn't any of that. You have neighbours that don't even know each other, not knowing who you live next to, and I think that's obviously obviously it's a big security risk to yourself more than anything. But like, you should know who your neighbours are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for people at home, they should find stability within themselves as best as they can in such a difficult time, but help the community out. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend money. It's just volunteering. All right, you don't get paid for it, and not a lot of people do have a lot of time anymore, but you have to make time to help one another out within your areas. I think slowly that would then expand. You support your local businesses because they're taking a massive hit at the moment as well. Massively. And you lose them, you're then reliant on these bigger organisations, you're then reliant on the big supermarkets and stuff like that. And they then have full control over everything at that point. And we don't want the establishment over controlling us. We just want to live our lives. We don't want any of this, because it is ridiculous with what's going on, with what they're forcing, with what they're pushing. It's mass control. And the way to stop it is by supporting each other, supporting your communities, uniting together.
I think it was Konstantin Kessin that at some in one of his speeches or in one of his interviews, he said that I think that he believes that people don't want to take responsibility for their own lives anymore, that there is a big cohort of people that are happy to give away the control of so many aspects of life from the government, because on the proviso that the government provides for them for so many things and so many aspects of life, you know, from benefits if you are a single mother to benefits if you are, I don't know, feeling a little bit anxious today. And that quite often we've sort of traded true freedom, for sort of being kept by the government. And do you think that people in general are waking up to the fact that they can't really have as much freedom as they want without equal amount of responsibility on the other side of it?
I think so. Yeah, I think there was too many handouts and everything like that, and people have taken it way too far. A lot of people are getting sick of it. There's a lot of people out there that obviously ever claimed a penny in their life. So for them, it's even more infuriating. I think, too much, like being too reliable on the government is what has essentially got us into this situation, because they've realised that the numbers are increasing. People have found out ways how to work around the system and claim a benefit. It's so easy now. I've always refused to even want to go on any kind of benefit. I've always had to work. I've always had to do something. I've never wanted to in my life be in that situation where I'm so reliant on the government.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting watching the younger generation, because I find that, your generation is starting to take up like real responsibility way earlier than I ever did. I could have really messed around until sort of my late 20s, early 30s. Not talking about like work, but like I was working and making money and all that, but outside work, I had a pretty chilled life. There wasn't too much dramas within the country. There was no major political turmoil, and you could just live your life leisurely without really having to grow up too much too quickly. And I feel like the younger generation really has to grow up way, way quicker. And there is part of your generation that is choosing the government and the hands out from the government, and you can tell them on the streets quite often. But the other parts is like, early 20s, very, very eloquent, really sharp, clearly, educated, but they are actually using the education. And it's that part of your generation that actually gives me quite a lot of hope for the future, because you are starting way, way earlier to actually start to take up that responsibility in life. And, don't get me wrong, there is clearly a split there. But the fact that your generation is taking that responsibility so much earlier means that the compounding effect of all of your efforts, like your life is going to look completely different when you are my age.
Yeah, I kind of like don't know where. I couldn't even tell you where I expect myself to be within the next 10 years, let alone 20, 30 years. It's
okay, I'm not that old.
No. I'm just saying, I couldn't even see myself getting to 10 years time. I have no idea where I'm going to be at that point.
Yeah. I think there is so much unrest right now within the UK that it is tricky, right? And the immigration is the number one topic that has just become this lightning rod for culture, society, and politics. So, do you see the crisis of immigration as primarily cultural or more economic? Which part do you think matters to people more?
What was it? Economic and
cultural, whether it's the effect of the immigration on the culture or on the economics that matters more to people.
I'm going to say culture to begin with. I think.
Okay.
I think I'm going to say culture. I think people are starting to realise now that it's not only just kind of like the expense side of things, the economic side of things. It's our kind of like ancestors, our previous generations. Everything that they've built up for us is on the verge of being replaced, and it's going to be down to us as to why that happens. And I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be the reason that my people are wiped out and replaced. I think it's culturally, yeah. I think people are starting to realise now our culture is incredible. We've got the most amazing country, and I don't think people appreciate it and realise it, and then they will do when it's too late. Absolutely, but just little things really. that people are really, really going to start to realise is quite detrimental to who we are and what we are as people.
I think you're right. I always thought that it was both, but as you were talking, something like appeared to me. And if you are the person that reads, the mainstream media, BBC and Sky News and all that, for the last 25 years, you've been on a diet of information that was telling you that immigration is absolutely wonderful for economics. Mm-hmm. And the fact that upwards of 80% of Brits now are against immigration, and they want to see either zero immigration or net zero immigration, means that, they don't care about economics anymore, even though people might believe that economically immigration is good for them. They still care enough about the culture to say no, to say enough. And this is even for the people that do believe that immigration is positive for economics, which we now know that it really isn't. In terms of the housing, for example, for your generation, what do you think is the temperature in the nation when it comes to young people and the housing crisis? And do you think that people, or maybe your generation, realizes the link between immigration and the housing shortages?
I think those who are aware of what's going on will link and can link it together, yes. I think those that still watch the news and nothing else kind of thing, I don't think they will do. I think they'll be they'll be blindsided to it. They're oblivious to it. Not at their own fault, obviously. But when you're being, like you said, after being fed so much information from the media, you are going to believe it. We are always brought up to listen to what's going on the news and trust the news. And they've betrayed that trust. But I think young people are starting to realise that there is a link between immigration, the immigration crisis, and the housing crisis. I can't afford to move out. I can't afford to go and buy a new place, kind of thing. It's virtually impossible for the younger generation to be able to do so now. It's really, really, really hard, considering everything that's going up and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. It is a shame, because that really wasn't the case even like 20 years ago. Like, don't get me wrong, the property prices were, high. If you don't have the money, then like even like getting 10 grand for the deposit is a lot of money, right? Yeah. But it didn't seem completely out of reach. If there was two of you working, you could have got on the property ladder. And I'm talking now like what, 2010, 2012, 13. Yeah. Not that long ago. And right now it just feels so out of reach. Now, I think that there was this research done to say that in the last 5 to 10 years, I think only about 15 to 20% of the property price jump can be attributed to immigration. The rest of it is other factors. But it certainly doesn't help. And I think the unfairness of it all, that, the nation that is struggling with their own people and for their own youth to start lives is handing out houses and the money that we just can't afford to be handing out to people that have got no right to be in the country and shouldn't be in the country at all. It's that deep sense of unfairness. And it does, I do really feel bad for the young people trying to sort of start their lives right now, because you've got way different issues than like I did when I was your age.
It's just totally different, isn't it? Now it is a big change from how it used to be to how it is. like you said, there's more issues now than there were before.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me more about then the Great British PAC. What is it that you actually do?
What's the Great British? So the Great British PAC, their obviously ultimate game and ultimate goal is to essentially unite the right. Okay, so they're not more of just being a it's more not a think tank, just more of a do tank kind of thing. They put together 10 claims that they want to put forward to achieve a way to hold the establishment accountable and to create a fair society as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the
what are some of them?
So some of them, for example, they want to have a patriotic government. Okay. They want to have the Great Repeal Programme. So they want to end Tony Blair's constitutional vandalism, essentially do away with the left's mess. Okay. Get rid of reckless regulations and stuff like that. Basically, it is smaller things. They want to cut the 400 plus bloated Quangos and NCOs. We want to stop wasting British taxpayers' money. We obviously said about the immigration being economic. It's also the Quangos and the NCOs that are also detrimental to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
We want to basically, what we're looking to do is protect the UK through the courts as well. We want our rules, our laws to be in place for our country, our people. We don't want ourselves to be governed by foreign bodies anymore. Okay. And we also want to make Britain proud again.
So how is it that you are you, I'm assuming that you are working with the parties, or are you just trying to basically like push them to assume certain, positions on whether it is the immigration, whether it is the lawmaking, whether it's the policies?
So we are so myself personally, I'm working within Lincolnshire. So I'm going to start putting pressure on the county council, because we want to hold people to account. We want transparency. People want to know what's going on now. We've had we've been blindsided for so long that people are sick of it. So if I can help out in that way by making the council be more transparent so they can hold people to account, then so be it. Overall, as the organisation, yeah, it's absolutely to hold people to account as well. It's to stop all of the I'm trying to think of the word. Basically, it's just everything that's been pushed onto us, the DEI initiatives, things like that. Like we just want to get rid of it all. We know that there's going to be things that obviously we need to adapt to, of course, but there's also things that we don't need to get involved with. We don't need to force. We don't need to push.
Yeah. I was speaking recently with Dr. Jake Scott, and he's got a brilliant Substack. And he is very much of the opinion that the British Constitution is such that you can just literally reverse the law rather than creating more, the policies and laws within an already complicated system. He said that you could just abolish so many laws that were put in place from, for example, Blair, is to essentially have like a, reset to what it used to be like in the year, let's say 1997, and sort of start from then, from there. And he was explaining to me that the British Constitution has that power within it. So it shouldn't be, impossible for the government to enact if they wanted to. Although he did say that there is definitely going to be a pushback from from the legal system that has now just been given so much power. All of these Quangos and all of these NGOs. The one thing that I did wanted to speak to you about is, obviously we do have so many think tanks on the right, or do tanks as you've described yourself, which I quite like. Where do you think is the line between you guys, one day becoming these Quangos just on the other side of the political spectrum?
Well, we are the opposite to what a Quango is anyway. So what we are, we're grassroots, we're donation funded. Okay, we've got no ties to any government money or bureaucracy. We are to empower the public. Okay, we're not to replace any domestic institution or democratic institutions. Sorry, everything we do is led by people, funded by the people, and accountable for the people as well. So that's where we won't ever come under or even have a link to being a Quango or anything like that.
I'm just trying to think whether we've got. Are you okay for the time for the next 20 minutes? Because I think if we move on to the farming and all that, it might sort of take us about 20 minutes to even try and wrap up later.
There's things that we can miss out, honestly. We don't obviously have to cover everything. The main thing, obviously, we've spoken about immigration, which is obviously a massive thing at the moment. I think it'll obviously be good to get the message out to support small local businesses. I think, but at the same time, is that going to affect people in the city? Realistically, we obviously want to get that message out, but that's something I can do away from getting that message out from this conversation, kind of thing.
Okay. There was one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and it was yesterday when I was looking for your bio. Yeah. It was so weird. As soon as I typed Great British PAC, you come on the top, but right under you, it's Hope Not Hate.
Really?
With the article, with the article that was taking sort of the members of your committee and, your essentially team members, and it was trying to take them apart with, far right views such as that Islam is a problem, for example, in the country. And it was I thought it was really, really curious how you were right on top, but the very next thing was not only a charity, so-called, that is being sponsored by the government and is being sponsored by the public money, trying to criticize you. So it wasn't something that I've mentioned, but are you happy for us to talk about it? Because I think that could lead on to the fact that there is quite a lot of these Quangos that are essentially trying to protect the status quo. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
We can definitely go for that.
So yesterday when I Googled a Great British PAC, there was something interesting that came up. And if you Google it, you obviously come right at the top. But the very, very next thing that comes up on Google is Hope Not Hate, so-called charity, with a hit piece on your organization, where it was basically taking, people from your team, from your committees, one by one, including lords, including MPs and ex-MPs, and essentially going through their Twitter wall from the last 10 years and things like that, and bringing up the so-called far-right views, which some of them are not actually far-right at all. They are pretty mainstream. But I thought it was really, really interesting how as soon as you type Great British PAC, the very next thing is the charity that is actually heavily sponsored by the public money through the government donation. Did you know that?
I did actually. I had actually seen and read a few things about when you did search for the PAC that I Hope Not Hate did come up. I'm not being. I think they've run their time now, haven't they? I think very little people actually pay attention to them as an organisation. People don't really take them seriously anymore because they know it's just a case of spouting and endless, like, it's just, trying to think of the word, it's just all name calling, isn't it, really? That's all they do. It's always racist, it's always, there's always a label to something. They've always got to label something a certain way. I think people are just fed up with it, to be fair. That's why the organisation actually put out a statement regarding the hit that Hope Not Hated put out against our some of the people within our organisation.
I mean, the far right has lost all the meaning in the last 10 years, which is a shame because we have language to mean something. And it's just been, there are certain phrases that have been misused so much that, like, your eyes just roll when you hear them now. And it is a shame, like I said, because we just can't have the normal conversation. When far right means nothing, then what do we use for the people that actually could be described as far right? Because, like, they've literally labeled like 80% of the population as far right because they don't like what's going on with the immigration in the country, and that is a far right view, apparently. But I thought it was really interesting that the organizations such as yours, which is essentially promoting democratic will of the people being enacted in policies, is being attacked by charities that are run through the public money, through the government, with the hit pieces about you. Like, it's, the optics of it are not very good, are they?
They don't look good, does it? It doesn't look good for them. And that's why people don't take them seriously anymore. Because it's just gone too far now. Like you said, so many people have been called far right. If you're calling a concerned parent far right, you've lost all credibility at that point. And no one's going to take you seriously. No one's going to listen to a word you've got to say anymore. You've got mothers out on the streets, especially in Norwich, most recently.
Oh God,
being vocal for their children because they're scared for them. And if that makes you far right, then I'd hate to think what the far left actually are.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it is funny. I was talking a couple of months ago now with Jenny Holland, and I was saying, like, why is it that the right is like fracturing but not the left? But we now do see the fracturing with the left. So we've got the radical left, we've got the very, very, very radical left that has just sort of fractured. And we've got the sane left with just very little cloud. As far as I know, the sane left is, like, I know of two people, which is Lord Glassman and Paul Embury. That is the extent of blue Labour that I am aware of. If they do exist, then, I mean, for the audience, if any more blue Labour people do exist, please give me their names because I would love to follow them and figure out where the hell are they. Because this is not, the blue Labour doesn't have any cloud. But it is interesting that now the left is splitting as well, which could counter the fact that we still have got the split within the right. I actually think that left splitting might be quite positive step.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, though, I feel like you've got so many different parts of the left, haven't you? Now you've obviously got the LGBT plus community. You've also got you've now got obviously the pro-Palestinian community, and they're never going to mix. For common sense reasons, they're never going to mix. Ever. They're never going to support one another. They're never going to understand one another because realistically, one hates the other. And that's, I think that's the thing with the left. They will never, ever, there's no common sense on that side. And on our side, as what you would class as the right, I would just class us as the proud people. That's what we are. We're proud of who we are. We're proud of our communities, everything. We love this country. We don't want it to go. We don't want it to be handed off to anybody else. But they do. And that's why they will always, they will never ever have any credibility. No one will ever show realistically respect on that side of things, because you can't hold a conversation with them on any topic of anything, really.
Yeah, it's a very shaky coalition for sure.
Yeah.
But then there is a reason why why Labour needs to have the votes for 16s, which it did make me laugh, because I think it was Angela Rayner that, talking about the votes for 16-year-olds, basically said that they are doing it to like make sure that we function as a democracy. And I remember thinking, I mean, if you really wanted to be a democracy, you would just do what your current voters want instead of just getting new voters.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
What do we know?
Exactly.
One more thing before we go. You have been quite vocal in supporting the farmers and the British producing the food. So do you, just for the people that might not be aware of what's going on in that industry, can you just give us a quick stop tour of what's been happening with the farming community in the UK?
Yeah, they basically, essentially, it goes obviously for the same as the business, but they are just being taxed an astronomical amount. It's almost to the point where no matter what they do, they're in a situation where they just can't get out of it. I've spoken to farmers and I've kind of like asked them on their situation, and they've basically said they're screwed. No matter what happens, that they are screwed. So they will have nothing. They won't be able to pay for anything. They won't be able to. They'll have to pass their land on to the government. The government are essentially tying their hands behind their back and taking their land off of them. What obviously the government are looking to do is to expand obviously on these solar fields. They want to build pylons going across all of the essentially all of the greenland, which is where obviously you have your crops grown. They're just looking at it. Once they do that, they destroy the farmlands. You won't be able to grow on it again. We then become again self-reliant on the government, and we then start getting food sent from abroad. If we don't have farmers, we don't have food, to put it plainly. We'll have food coming from other countries that is all controlled by the government and the establishment. They can turn that off whenever they like if there's any civil unrest, which is obviously the way that we're looking like we're heading down right now with how everything's going. But yeah, the farmers, they are really struggling. They need all of our support. Supermarkets, they're getting all of their produce from abroad as well, so they're not necessarily assisting our farmers, which is why I'll always push for and say, as much as possible, get down to your local farm shop and use cash as well if and where available, and help them out. We need them, and right now they desperately need us.
I mean, the really strange thing is, if outsourcing manufacturing has worked so well in this country, I mean, why are they doing the same for the food production? Like, clearly the outsourcing of manufacturing hasn't worked long term. It's just been horrible for the country. Why the hell do they think that doing that with food actually people need is a good idea is beyond me. I'm just trying to sort of conjure up the Steelman argument for the people that do think that the inheritance tax on the farmers was the right thing to do. And I think their main criticism was that previously, before this new tax regime came in, it was a relatively safe way of sort of passing the inheritance tax, essentially buying farmland and then passing it to the next generation without taxes. Was it really like a free inheritance essentially for your children, or was it not as people labeled it?
I don't believe so. I think it was just a way to attack the country from another angle. Personally, you put people into a frenzy if you're at risk of taking away their food. I think it's just an excuse. Personally, I mean, okay, there's probably some people out there that probably had abused it. Of course, there's people that's going to find loopholes in absolutely everything. But there's a loophole. People are going to use it at the end of the day to be able to help save themselves some money, especially in today's current climate. I think when it comes to the farmlands kind of thing, I think if there was a way that you could obviously, if you were able to buy farmland and you were evidently producing food for communities, things like that, I don't see why they should have been targeted personally, because they're contributing to the country, they're contributing to their community, they're helping in some kind of way. Everything's going to end up being taxed anyway because you're going to have to submit everything. So there was no way around that. There was no way around cheating the system on that side of things.
I mean, one would think that if they were loopholes in the previous system, they would just fix the loopholes or close the loopholes instead of just introducing the tax regime, which will essentially force majority of the farming family to sell the land once it starts to be sort of given to the next generation. Because for people that might not be aware of what was introduced is that the way that they've now essentially taxed the farms means that when you pass the land to the next generation, there is like a ton of taxes which is being generated because land is expensive and farms tend to have a lot of it to grow crops. Because there is no point farming 2 acres. That's just not enough.
No.
So then the tax bill which is generated is just ridiculous, and the farms just don't make enough money to pay that. I think I've seen some calculations where it takes farming family 10 years to make the amount of money that they would need to pay on the death of the parents, which is just absolutely ludicrous. So that what's essentially going to then happen is that they will be forced to sell, and who will be able to buy it? These massive food conglomerations, huge companies that are they lobbying the government? Are they working with the government to get hold of the land? I think there's been some accusations made there.
I was going to say just really quickly,
Go on.
they are. What they're essentially doing to people is, if a family member passes away, they're straight onto them for them to rent the land out to the government. So they don't have to pay any inheritance tax at all, but they have no say over what goes on that land. And that's where.
How long for?
I'm not sure on the amount of time.
Okay.
I need to double check that, but I know that these are conversations that have been that have happened fairly recently. I'd probably say within the last 8-9 months, they've probably happened, these conversations, since this government have come in.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they are essentially asking farmers to rent their land to the government, so they don't have to pay the inheritance tax. So it essentially would that come under as essentially like a blackmail for them to get around the inheritance tax? Not blackmail. Yeah, I guess blackmail, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. I had something similar with the property that I owned. The council was sort of pushing us. They essentially charged us like 200% council tax over the space of a year, whilst at the same time they were pressuring me to rent them the property to house refugees and asylum seekers, which basically I replied back to them highlighting that, and that I'm more than happy to go to the media with this, and then they dropped it immediately. They dropped it.
They will.
But it was that's why my ears pricked up when you said that, because I was like, oh, that sounds familiar.
It's the way they do it.
Okay. Okay, for the people that want to follow what Great British PAC is doing, where can they find them, and where can they find you online?
So you can find myself online. You can find my Twitter handle is Daniel_S001. To have a little look at the Great British PAC website, it is literally just the www.greatbritishpac.com. To get involved, you can join as members. You can participate in Grassroots campaign. You can contribute to ideas for our online policy and petition platforms. You can attend local events, help spread the message on social media as well, support legal and advocacy efforts. You can all play a part driving patriotic change and holding the establishment accountable. If you want to as well, you can sign up onto www.policyplatform.co.uk, and you can also join on www.petitionplatform.co.uk as well.
Okay, lovely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Daniel Schofield.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Wisdom Rebellion. Before you go, if you enjoyed the conversation, please consider subscribing. It massively helps with keeping the show on the road so we can all build a wiser world together. And if you loved this video, you will also love this one. I'll see you there.